Hello, warriors. Welcome to the U Movement. I am B. How are you enjoying the year of the fire horse so far? And this eclipse portal that we find ourselves in. Wow! Uh, and I wanted to hop on today because yesterday there was a definite shift in energy for me that was quite magical and beautiful, actually. That's not to say all of a sudden everything is just hunky dory, but it's certainly feeling a lot better than last week. Uh, like wow, I really in the last, I don't even know how many days, maybe 10 days ish. I've lost track of time. I've lost track of days. I've lost track of reality. I've lost track of who the fuck I am. And it's been a little bit, confusing, to say the least. But there's definitely a little bit more clarity today and a little bit more lightness, which is a blessing, a very big blessing. I do take these moments of peace that come and savor them fully. I look at each one as like sucking on a ripe mango when you're very, very thirsty and hot. Like it's refreshing after doing all the deep shadow work that has been required on this awakening path. And so, in celebrating the light, I want to talk a little bit about, my journey in its entirety, as well as what precipitated this shift in energy for me. So as you guys know, I really resonate with Craig Holliday's teachings. He's got a YouTube channel here, and I came across him from at the very near the beginning of my Kundalini awakening. At first, it was hard for me to I wasn't there yet. I wasn't ready. They say when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. The first time I came into kind of contact with his teachings, his videos, I was like, I don't know. But I think that's because that's not a reflection on him. That's a reflection on me and where I was vibrationally, because I was such a completely different human being before. I found a lot of spiritual teachers off-putting. My ego itself was like, ugh. There were a lot of things I went, ugh, to, because, I dabbled with spirituality. I lived my own definition of spirituality. I didn't follow any particular school of thought. In my own spiritual journey over the last 30 plus years, I would do I dab my toe into this pool and then go, and I dab my toe into this pool and go, and all the while having this ego character that had I was cool. I was too cool for school. So a lot of the really airy fairy and if it was too strict, if it was too rigid, if it was too cultish, if it was too like away with the fairies kind of thing, then I was like off-putted. Because and I know where this comes from. It comes from being raised in an environment where spirituality and religion was a no-no. It was like it was something that got scoffed at and put down. And although my mother used to call herself agnostic, she was not. She was not agnostic. There's a misuse of words, and it's one of my autistic pet peeves, how horribly people misuse words. I really need to do a video about that. But anyways, because of that, I had this guard up, this shield of like, oh, that's ridiculous, and oh, this, and what I've learned by not following any one particular dogma is that they're all actually really useful to a certain extent, and they all have some stuff that's like borderline. I got some questions about that, whether it be traditional religious backgrounds of Christianity. There are some really good teachings in there. There's also some, structure within the church that is very hard no. And the same can be said within New Age community. There's some really beautiful lessons and wonderful things that you can take from it. And then there's some things that are like, yeah, no, that's way too far out there. That's just too far gone for me. And Buddhism and yogic practice and, all these different lineages, all these different paths to spirit, all have incredible teachings. And then they also have some things that make you raise your eyebrow. And my eyebrow used to get raised really quickly, like really fast. Like my skepticism and this built-in judgment program that I had inherited from my mother meant that I was already like, I was quick to judge. I was quick to react to certain things. So when I first came across his videos, I was like, yeah, no, this isn't for me. But as I progressed through my awakening journey, and I suppose my vibrational frequency elevated and my consciousness opened more and more, I came back and I was like, actually, a lot of this stuff does feel a little bit true. It's resonating at a new level of truth, which the lesson there is that what can be true in one consciousness is not necessarily going to hold in a higher level of consciousness, which is what we learn on our awakening. As much of the things that we believed about ourselves, about the world around us, about people, about anything, crumbles away in higher consciousness that we get moved into, because it no longer holds weight. It just can't. It doesn't go up with you, right? So when you open yourself to new levels of awareness, new teachers and new truths come in. So I had been, for the last year more, I don't know, in and out attending his Kundalini Awakening group. And from there, I was like, okay, I'm going to really like dive into this and invest my money in one of his counseling packages. So you get five sessions with him in this package. And to be honest, I was skeptical, because I always start from a place of skeptical now. Like I don't start with 100% trust with anyone. Like I start with almost 0 to 40, like I'm willing to give this a chance. So he had earned himself up into about, I 40% trust, But I'll give this a go. I'll see what this is like. I'll see what I can gain from it. So yesterday I had my fourth of the 5 session with him, and because of the energies that and everything that I've been going through and all my own personal life changes, the Zoom meeting started and I just started flooding. It was just like floods of tears just started coming out of me. And that's not something I normally like to do in front of other humans. I've learned to do it, and I accept that it's part of it, but there's still an egoic a shadow of my ego that comes and goes, oh, geez, I'm sorry. Like, don't. But this is what was the main reason that I wanted to do spiritual work with him, was because he was a him, first of all. Because one of the things that I have recognized on my awakening path has been the distortions that I have grown up with, which has resulted in a lack of modeling of not only healthy feminine energy, and I've talked in so many of my videos about, my mother, but I also lacked healthy masculine energy. An example of that in my life, I grew up in a sea of toxicity, and most of us have, society as a whole. It's not just, yes, my family was fucked up, but society as a whole is pretty fucked up. And like when you go through your own awakening process, you realize how fucked you are and how fucked the world is. And motivated by the Prophets of Rage song, Unfuck the World, my awakening process has been the unfucking. I'm like, okay, right, this is the unfucking, and I gotta do a lot of stuff to unfuck myself, and then I'm gonna unfuck the world. Lofty goals. But first I had to start with self. The whole point is you have to start with self. And so on this awakening process, I've been unfucking one thing after another thing after another thing. And I wanted to heal both within me, because and listen, I always knew, because of my teachings as a Reiki practitioner, I always knew that, we've got divine feminine and masculine energy in us, but, that didn't mean anything. It didn't hold as much like power in understanding until really the whole twin flame situation kicked off. And then I was like, wait, what? I'm a divine feminine somewhere in here. I don't feel very divine. And there's divine masculines out there in the world. Like, who are they? Like, where do they reside? Do they hang with the leprechauns? Because I ain't seen any. And so I grew up in the familial as well as the societal distortions of what it was to be female and what it was to be male and what it was to interact between those two polarities and what it was to, exist within the framework that is patriarchy, right? And patriarchy, my opinion, fucked the world. It didn't just fuck females. It fucked men too, equally. We're all fucked, unless you're part of the hierarchy, the tippy top, which I read somewhere recently to stop calling them the elites and start calling them like the pedo ring, because, you know, the tippy top has really messed up distortions, and those have trickled down into permeating everything, like every single area of society, in a really toxic, distorted kind of way. So I grew up with weak men, and weak men act out and create a bravado. You know, their mask, their inner weakness is like, I am weak. And so they create a bravado that they wear, the mask. And I'm not saying they're horrible. I'm just saying that's what they do. And women do the same, right? Women literally paint masks on their face. Men pop off their chest and, you know, have their locker room chat and, you know, say things and act in a manner and, you know, oh yeah, I'm like a cool dude. Oh yeah, you should have seen her. She was all over me. I got another one on my bedpost. You know, men can be real pricks, you know, but within that, there's this whole, you know, boys being boys and everything's like socially acceptable and it's okay. And, you know, my porn addiction is totally cool. And, you know, what is, you know, loyalty? I can do what I want. I don't have to be accountable for anything because, you know, nobody's ever made me accountable for anything. Because it's a distortion, right? It's a distortion of this ego. So this man who behaves in a way that is misogynistic, often quite racist, ableist, you know, certainly there. I hadn't even heard the term ableism until recently, because growing up, I've always been autistic. Not that anybody knew, but anytime I acted in any way, shape, or form that like seemed autistic, it was like, "What are you, retarded?" I got that a lot, and I was like, "Oh my god, I don't want to be retarded. I got to act more normal, right? I got to mask better. So there's this sarcasm. There is this just attitude, and within that, there is the rage. You know, when it doesn't go their way, you're faced with rage, which is, from a feminine's point of view, you know, energetic violence. Okay, you may not be hitting me, but when there is a physical, somebody is louder, bigger, stronger than you already, and to add an element of power and aggression into the mix, it's terrifying. It is absolutely terrifying. So I grew up being raged at, not only from my mother, but from my father as well. And, you know, you'd hear those steps on the, you know, boom, 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 the brute weight of them. You'd hear the steps on a staircase and you'd be scared out of your fucking mind, right? You'd be scared out of your mind. So there was always an element of fear with men. There was also an element of like, accept the sarcasm, accept the jokes. You know, I was the butt of the joke in my household. And so everybody, it was for my mother's pleasure. It was like she would hold court and everybody would be like trying to get the tension off themselves. So they would participate in her monkey court, which was, you know, make fun of her, you know, and this created great amusement. You know, the sarcasm that was in my house was gross. I don't tolerate sarcasm at all. I don't tolerate sarcasm. And of course, then I ended up marrying a man that was exactly like that, right? Exactly all of those, masks upon masks, the mask of the charming guy, because within, a lot of these men in the right environment morph into the nice guy. They morph into the nice guy. And so I, not having the depth of perception in my youth and my childhood, in my adult years, saw the mask of the nice guy, saw the mask of, the player, and I thought that's who they were. Like, I didn't see beneath it to be seeing them from a perspective of how cruel it actually was. For me, because of how I was raised, putting up with that energy, the toxic masculine energy, was preferable. It was preferable. It was safer than being with the feminine distortions. The feminine distortions was like narcissism for me. Like, it was real danger. It was psychological danger. One was physical and sexual danger. The other one was psychological danger. Either which way, it felt like danger. Either which way, it felt like my life, I was not safe. There was like zero safety in my life. And this awakening process, as I say, the first thing Spirit ever said to me back in December of 2019 was save yourself. And I was like, what? Like, I don't know how to even do that. Like, to save myself. Like, I started taking a long, hard look at my life and how fucked up it was. And I was like, I don't know how to do this, but I'm going to have to figure this out. I'm going to have to just unfuck one thing at a time. I'm going to have to take the worst situation that's got going on and unfuck that. And when I resolve that, I'll move on to the next, and I'll move on to the next, and I'll move on to the next. And so within this warrior's journey of unfucking it all, I had to get to a place at one point where I'm unfucking the belief structures around what it is to be feminine and what it is to be masculine, and where there are distortions, and what the fuck is divine feminine or divine masculine. Like, what is that? What does that even look like? And how am I supposed to model that to me for my own internal masculine and feminine energy, as well as to identify it in others? Like, where do I even locate that? And I was at a total loss because I'd never had that modeled to me. And so the more I sat week after week in Craig's Kundalini group, the more I was like, okay, I think that this is what divine masculine looks like. I'm not sure. Like, I don't know. It's very different than any other masculine energy I've ever, dealt with. I've never dealt with a man like him before. So I was like, I'm going to take the risk, because there's a lot of risk taking involved in healing process. I'm going to take the risk, and I'm going to do some like one-on-one with him to really like dive deep. So that was the primary motivation for me for wanting to work with him, was because he was a man. Not because of his training or anything else. Just simply, I wanted to know what it was to sit in the energy and have a divine masculine. And I really shouldn't give him air quotes, because he is a divine masculine. But a divine masculine energy hold a container for me where I am safe, and where I can be guided in a way that is healing and productive. So yesterday, as I said, we started the session and he's like, what's going on for you? You know, talk to me. And he's calm and attentive and really wants to hear what you're saying, not because his mind is quick to like, I'm going to fix you, simply because he wants to hear what you are saying. And so that in itself is like, I don't know what this is. Like, what? And so it's been a little bit of a learning curve from first session to fourth session for me to trust, for me to like relax a little bit more and more each time. I've been open, you know, like I will open myself to the possibility, and I will close myself quickly enough, as we experienced with the other fellow that I wanted to do a session with, Matthew Paulette, which that was quickly within 4 minutes. You know, I was open, I was closed. But with Craig, I was open and I stayed open. And so he was asking, you know, so what's happening? And I was explaining to him that in my current reality, I'm struggling because this is the first time I've ever been safe. And he goes, whoa, wait, what? I want to hear what you just said. And I was like, well, this is the first time that I'm safe, really, in my life. And he said, let's pause on that for a second and like really hear what you just said. So not only is he hearing me, but he is helping me hear me. You know what I mean? Because my own internal masculine energy doesn't have a model, my ability to listen to myself has been debilitated because I never had a man in my life that was like, I want to hear you. I want your feelings, your emotions, your needs are important enough to me that I'm going to actually hear you. And so in that moment, that penny dropped, and I was like, being heard and being not just outside of me, but inside of me, you know, it was reflecting inside of me. My own internal masculine was hearing me for the first time really state, I am safe for the first time in my life. And that reverberated out in a way that was like energetically something shifted. You know, along my awakening, people have been saying to me over and over again, you know, like, what you've been able to do is amazing. It's like incredible. And I haven't heard it. Like, I have not heard it or recognized it because I'm like, yeah, but I still have to do this and I still have to do this and I still have to do that, because I couldn't recognize what I had done or heard what I had done because I had never had that in my life. I was never recognized. I was never seen, and I was never heard, like, for who I truly am. I was mocked. I was ignored. I was raged at. You know, I was given silence. Like I knew not that you didn't like talk about things with my father or my brother on a authentic level. Like, that's not something you did. Like, you you would talk about the weather or politics or, but you wouldn't talk about yourself, because it wasn't safe. And if you did, you risked getting like laughed at, poked fun of, or just kind of ignored, So my relationships with men was first based on a very superficial level of knowing each other, Like I don't really know those men, even though they were in my life. Like I don't know them. I had 1 week with my father before he died, where he was staying with me. And I think I got to know him better that week than any previous time periods that we had together. Like if you phoned home and he answered the phone, it would be, okay, hold on, I'll get your mother. Yeah. Hi. So I didn't really get a lot of like one-on-one father-daughter time. I didn't get the protection. He was just resigned to like follow the role that had been given to him by her. She directed everybody's positioning. It was very clear-cut narcissism. And you've got the golden child, you've got the scapegoat, and we're all triangulated against each other, So she was a wedge in between me and my father. She was a wedge between me and my brother. I didn't have a person. I had a lot of triangulation. So to hear myself and say the words, this is the first time that I'm really safe in my life. But the problem is my body doesn't know it, or my nervous system doesn't know it. So we went on to talk about, the challenges that is moving a nervous system out of surviving into thriving, because I'm not at thriving yet. In many ways, I'm on my way there, but he was able to like validate, reassure, offer understanding, like acknowledge reality, and to not have somebody gaslight you, because when you are triangulated against and you're in a company of masked people, they don't validate your experience because their own experience is invalidated, so they don't know how to validate, right? So within the constructs of a narcissist's nest or web, people can't give you what they themselves don't have, right? And they too are equally deprived, and their roles are equally as dysfunctional and constrained. But that means that nobody is interacting from a place or level of being authentic and being honest and speaking truth. It's all a concocted reality, right? And so here I am saying, this is the first time that I have been safe in my life. And he brings the energy into ground. He grounds that reality, which is my reality, into the ground instead of gaslighting me. Because if I had said at any point in my life, I think my mother is narcissistic, or I went to a counselor and they told me mom's narcissistic, I would have been told, no, she's not. Don't say mean things. She's our mother. You know, like I would have been negated. So toxic masculinity negates the feminine's reality, and healthy masculine energy grounds it and holds it and hears it and sees it and acknowledges it. And so my mind went boom, like it in a positive way, because I'm like, holy crap, I'm not fighting for my truth. My truth is being recognized. And so then, you know, he helped through his training, which helps as well, is to have somebody who's trained. He helped recognize, you know, the process of taking a dysregulated nervous system that you've been in all your life, freeze, fawn, fight, flee, you know, all four of them moving around at different times, you know, and I've been in a functional freeze for very long, so long that my entire body like froze up. Like I could barely move. And he was able to say, listen, your body is detoxifying. Your body is going to take a little bit longer to get to the reality that you are in fact safe. So this is when, you know, you cultivating some of your own feminine of softness is really important. Soft, rest, meditation. So it was great. So he did, you know, advise, not in a mansplaining way, not in a lecturing way, not in a you should have done this or you did something wrong kind of way, but in a I've like sat with what this is, I've grounded this, and I can see where what would help. These types of things could help. And I'm still in awe of the validation and the experiencing of being held in divine masculine energy. I'm still like in awe of it. And so then I said to him, because it felt safe, like I was heard, I was like, oh, well, can I show you something? And he's, of course. I said, I'd like to show you my before and after photo, if you don't mind. Maybe it would give greater context to why I'm, you know, like a mess. My entire like, I was crying and shaking and everything. And he's like, of course. So I sent him the before and after photo that I've used many times on my channel. And his reaction was like, what? Like, what? Like, I would never have been able to see that was you. And that was you only 6 years ago. And you went through all of these things. And that list is actually short, you know, like that was an abbreviated list. There's lots more that could have been on that list. And again, I was seen, I was acknowledged, and my journey was validated in a way that was all of a sudden I was able to even ground further. And although, you know, like I've had many of, you know, my followers, my viewers be like, you know, oh my God, you've done this, you've done that. I still hadn't been able to like see myself, ground myself, because my own masculine energy within me wasn't seeing me for what I had accomplished. I could only ever see myself through the lens that I had previously been modeled, which was to like purposefully not recognize the pain and suffering that I was in, to gaslight and say everything's fine, you know? And so when I got modeled from a masculine energy, oh my God, this was you and this is you now. And these are all the things that you've done, you know, like that's like huge. And I was like, wait, it's huge. It was like, for the first time, having a parent figure, and now he's about the same age as me, probably even maybe younger than me. I'm not sure how old he is. But in my inner child, I was like, this is like a daddy figure in that moment. Because that's, when we seek outside counsel, it's like a reparenting for our inner child. And in that moment, my inner child was like, Daddy just saw me. Daddy just saw me. Daddy just validated me. And I don't mean that in a, like, it sounds a little like out there. Daddy. I'm certainly not going to start calling him daddy or anything like that. But energetically, for the inner child, to have divine masculine energy see me, hear me, acknowledge me, validate me, and encourage me from a place of pride. Like you should be proud of yourself. Like, no wonder your nervous system is whack. He didn't say it like that, but like, that's kind of what he was implying, is like, no wonder your nervous system is dysregulated, because look at everything you've had to go through and everything. And so if those, of you that don't know my journey, I'm going to go into that, and today's video will probably be long, but who cares? I derived great joy from my videos. So in 2019, just to give you some history, my awakening journey had begun with a healing crisis. It had actually, like, the healing crisis had started before that, but that was the apex, the epitome of like reaching the crisis point. It was building for many years before that. But I was overweight. I was diagnosed with diabetes. I was diagnosed with sleep apnea. I had failed an Alzheimer's test that the doctor, like a pre-screening Alzheimer's test. I had migraines. I had sinus issues and breathing problems. I had severe irritable bowel syndrome for like 20 years. Like that was just my way of existing. I had hormonal issues, as well as like severe endometrial problems. I ended up having surgery for that. I had injuries. I had sharpshooting pain down my left leg. I had severe back pain, and my entire anatomy chain, from the back, the piriformis, the glutes, the psoas, the IT bands, were all so tight and so restricted from being so stoic and frozen. Talk about functional freeze. My body had begun to armor itself after so long of being in survival mode, that like I had lost mobility. So walking up a flight of stairs was insanely difficult. Sitting for long periods of time was difficult. Walking was difficult. Like, as I said, mobility, lying down, was about the most comfortable I could be. So I spent a lot of time in bed. I was severely depressed, like despondent depressed. I suffered from anxiety. I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder again. And I was diagnosed with general anxiety disorder. And I wasn't seeing any improvements with any of the medications that they had been putting me on since about 2015. Let's talk about 2015 for a second, because in 2015, I had like a complete nervous breakdown. Like, just, I couldn't take it. The stress that I was under within the marriage, and I just couldn't figure it out. Like, I couldn't figure out what was wrong. Like, I kept trying to figure out, and I was going in circles, and my father died, and it was a clusterfuck extraordinaire. And at one point, we were driving in the car on the major highway, the 401, and he was driving me to work because I wasn't allowed to drive. and we were fighting as per usual, and I put my hand on the door handle, and what was going through my head was like, I would rather just open this car door and roll out right now. And obviously I didn't do that, and that's a no-no for me. Like, I just, at the age of 15, when I first thoughts of like, man, I'd really rather not be on this human plane anymore. Spirit told me way back then, like, I just knew something in me that was, that's just not an option. Like, you're just not allowed to do that. In fact, it scared me more than anything. So I got out of the car and I was so scared by these thoughts that I would like rather roll onto a highway. So I had at that point called myself. I got out of the car, I called for an ambulance, and I brought myself to the hospital. And I was like, yeah, I'm not doing good here. I'm seriously not good. So at that stage, they put me on SSRIs. So I was on SSRIs, SSNIs, Wellbutrin, this, that, and the other for 4 years, like just constant. And the longer I was on the antidepressants and all these meds, the more of a zombie I became. So whatever the problem was that I wasn't seeing, which was that I was in an abusive relationship, became even harder to see. Like, you can't see it. You cannot see it. My inner masculine couldn't see or recognize or acknowledge what was happening. Okay. So, because that's what I was modeled, not seeing, not hearing, ignoring. So I was trying to fix the problem without ever understanding what the problem was, which is way it is for a lot of people in abusive relationship, because you can't believe that anybody would be that intentionally cruel. And two, you can't believe that they're that stupid. I used to ask, like, is he just like, what, why? Like the constant, you're in cognitive dissonance and you're so fucking confused. So add confusion to my list of just like, it's no wonder my brain was so addled that I was like unable to like figure it out. So all these medications that I'd been put on had exacerbated my health to the nth degree, where, because they have all these symptoms, these side effects that come with taking these pharmaceutical drugs. And so I was not getting any better. I was getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And I kept pushing. I was that annoying patient that would just kept going in every so often to my doctor with a laundry list, a binder with color-coded headings. I'm like, you want to talk physical? Want to talk emotional? Let's break this down, because I'm in a bad way. I'm in a really bad way. So they sent me off for testing in a different city, a bigger city, with the university hospital. And they came up with, after 4 hours of testing, they came up with agoraphobia. And I was like, do you people even know what you're doing? Like, really? And then I started not trusting the system anymore. And I started investigating my own and came across an understanding of what complex post-traumatic stress disorder is, which isn't even in the DSM. So what's the point of a DSM if you're going to ignore what most people's problem is, which is trauma? And you're going to like create other personality disorders or other emotional disorders when you're ignoring. Okay, so you're not hearing or seeing. So there's an example in society of distorted masculine energy again playing out. Like, let's not actually pay attention to the problem. Let's gaslight the situation and come up with some like, well, I'm a highly educated, psychiatrist. I've got years of education behind me. I know because, I'm educated. There's distorted masculine energy for you, of like this expertise that came up with the most ludicrous diagnosis I've ever heard. And their recommendation was to do electroshock therapy. And I was like, okay, now you're really high. Like, seriously, you people you're done. So that set me off on my own mission. So between 2015, 2019, I already had started. It was like in that pre-awakening phase of doing my own research. And I glommed across the works of Gabor Mate, When the Body Says No, and Bessel van der Kolk, The Body Keeps the Score. And it was like, bing, 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 bing. Like light bulbs were going off. I'm like, finally, somebody sees me in this book. These two masculines that wrote this book, I'm like, I felt seen and heard. So I suppose Gabor Mate is actually my first example of divine masculine energy in my life. Not that we've met in person, but it is very reassuring to read material that you're like, yes, yes, yes. Yes! Oh my God, yes! You know, so if you haven't read those books, maybe you want to. And then further, I went on to read Through My Awakening, Complex Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder from Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker. So another divine masculine energy that can see you, really see the problem, not be all in their deludedness, okay? And so this awakening that came, this conscious awakening, this hearing spirit in 2019 that said, you have to save yourself. I like looked at myself and I was like, I look like a manatee. And that's what I used to call myself because I was self-loathing program. I look like a manatee. I can't work. I had at this point just lost my job. And I had tried previously because, the economic element of dysfunctional marriage, abusive marriage, financial abuse is a real thing. I was massively in debt. My whole life just looked like a shit show, like extraordinaire, like a clusterfuck extraordinaire. And I'm like, how can I save myself? How can I make the money that I need to make to get out of this marriage? How can I because I could see in that moment, how dysfunctional, that it was never going to get any better. And the imagery that was the clinch pin for me, and I don't know where this came from, or who said it, but somebody said, when look around and make sure if you're trying to save a boat, a sinking ship, that you're not the only one bailing, and that there's nobody in the boat drilling holes. And I was like, oh Jesus, I'm in a boat that's sinking and this dude's drilling holes and I'm bailing like a mofo. And no wonder my nervous system and my health and my everything else is completely shot, because you can't keep that up. You can't keep that up. So I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? So, I had no choice but to start addressing each of the issues. So first, it was the physical realm of healing the diabetes, healing the sleep apnea, healing this. And within the physical realm, that meant addressing a lot of the addictive behaviors that I had that were exacerbating the health conditions. Like the smoking was making the nasal and not inability to breathe worse, and the sleep apnea worse. So I had to quit the smoking. And there was an interim period where I went from smoking tobacco to smoking pot because I thought it was more natural and it would get me. And then there came a point where I had to quit that too. But it was useful as an interim. The irritable bowel, the stomach issues, the other things, the drinking's got to go. And as I've said, the drinking was quitting me anyway, so it was becoming harder and harder to do that. The pharmaceuticals had to go. They weren't doing anything because they were also making me not be able to lose weight and causing their own, problems. So I'm healing the physical body one disorder and disease and injury at a time. I'm letting go of all the toxic things that I'm consuming, foods, let go of sugar, let go of gluten, let go of dairy, let go of food colorings, let go of like seed oils, let go of like preservatives, let go of fluoride, let go of antiperspirant deodorant. So now I'm changing my physical body. I'm getting rid of hair dye. I'm not wearing makeup. I'm, challenging myself to like face the toxic feminine indoctrination that is to look prepubescent and sexualize myself through my awakening process. So then I'm addressing my sexuality and my and looking at that and clearing all these wounds around it, and it's one thing after another and after another. Like it just was crazy. And then as that's all happening, in my 3D reality is completely collapsing and crumbling, because as I'm shifting and changing and no longer participating in toxic behaviors and toxic thinking, all the relationships in my life disintegrated, every single one of them, because you can't exist if you're pulling yourself out of toxicity. You can't maintain relationship that's been bonded through toxicity, through trauma bonds. And so, like, en masse, trauma bond after trauma bond after trauma bond after trauma bond, and then you'd meet new people and they'd be kind of a trauma bond, and you'd be like, oh, that's and you keep getting tested. Are you sure you learned this lesson? Are you sure that this? It's like, So the awakening process itself is traumatizing. And through your awakening, you see and identify all your trauma that you had throughout your life. And all the times that you were pretending that everything is fine. And you realize, holy fuck, nothing has ever been fine. I was never fine. It was never fine. I was never safe. Everything I did was to stay alive, to survive, whether that was, the toxic behaviors, the toxic sexuality, the toxic romantic relationships and trauma bonds, the abusive situations that you would find yourself in, the foods that you would eat, the advice that you would follow, the gaslighting you would do for yourself, the self-loathing that you had become the underlying program that you write, that it's like, it must be me because everybody else in the world is saying it's me, so it must be me. And everything else. At what point in my 53 years was I safe? And then you come to the devastating reality that you weren't. At no point were you. You became an expert. Like, I was an expert at surviving. I was an absolute expert of surviving. And each situation that I had to survive, I used anything and everything to survive and to adapt. My being was like, no, you're not checking out of this reality. So within the constructs of a narcissistic marriage, I used food, I used, pharmaceuticals, I used cognitive dissonance, I used functional freeze, I used fawning. Within my 10 years in a foreign country on my own as a single mother, I used, functional freeze. I'm just going to be stoic. I'm just going to pretend. I'm going to mask. Everything's fine. I'm going to use alcohol. I'm going to use cigarettes. I'm going to use whatever I need to use. In the years before that, I'm going to go through the world and I'm going to use, sexuality, and I'm going to call it, independence, and I can do my own thing, and I'm going to reframe it in ways that like makes me feel better about myself. I'm going to use pharmaceuticals. I did in my 20s, going through my first divorce. In my teenage years, I'm going to use it. I'm going to mask, I'm going to fawn, I'm going to fight, I'm going to hit the dance floor and, rage against the machine myself into oblivion. I'm going to like do whatever I need to do to survive. So I've only been in post survival, like to the point where I survived for a relatively short period of time. Like in the last 6 months of my awakening, I sold my house that was the ship that was sinking and had me like I was drowning. Like, oh God. I survived a 3-year legal battle with my brother, which was insane. Fucking insane. But I keep just telling myself over and over and over again in that situation that sometimes not getting what you want is a wonderful stroke of luck. Because had I sold my house when the day my mother had died, then I would have been fucked, because my ex would have swooped in and manipulated the situation. It would have been bad. So everything needed to be as it was, because I needed to get divorced first before I could resolve my legal battle for me to be safe. And even though I lost thousands of dollars, technically in this moment, financially, I am safe. In this moment, right here today, I don't know about next year, I am technically safe. So I am financially safe for the first time in my life. And that only resolved in October. Okay, so that was finally resolved in October. And I learned to drive. First time in my entire life. I bought myself a car, so I'm safe and no longer reliant on other people. I got myself here. I had to move 3 times in the last 6 months. And, I thought I was safe, and then I wasn't safe. That quickly presented that as soon as I was there was one problem, another problem, another problem. So that wasn't safety. That was still dealing with more things. Then I moved to a B&B, and that wasn't really safe because, although I was like physically safe, my nervous system, I was doing a lot of processing at that B&B. So from October until end of January was a lot of nervous system releases, what was happening, this detox process. And I love the fact that Craig called it, you're going through detox. You've been in a state of survival for so long that your entire body is now detoxing. And giving it that frame of reference was that's exactly what's happening to me. All these purges and everything is I am actually detoxing. And so it's not even been a month that I've been in this new location, and my body is starting to fall. And I've had crazy pains down my legs and in my back as another layer of clench relaxes, as the fascia begins to let go of its stoic positioning of readiness and hypervigilance that exists within the body. Hypervigilance for me isn't just the mind going fucking ape and going, oh my God, what's the next thing? I got to be prepared. Oh, this could happen or that could happen. Or, micro reading people's facial expressions and listening to everything, and the paranoia that I get that oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I get crazy PTSD and paranoia that I've been experiencing for the last, I don't know, since about 2020. As more and more of my body has gone through a process of melting. Literally I melted, I was a very huge iceberg. And that iceberg in that state of freeze begins to like melt and thaw. And as it does, it begins to soften. And I'm in this process right now of softening. And as I'm observing spring and looking out over the next few months, I'm going to observe the world around me begin to melt and soften. And I'm hoping through the meditative process that I will get more in alignment with feminine energy of softening, which I'm finally allowed to do at age 53. I am finally allowed to be a feminine. I am finally allowed to let my feminine rest, not work every single day at unfucking the next thing. I gotta unfuck the next thing. I gotta unfuck the next thing. And like, that's why I have 900 videos. 902 videos. I checked this morning. 902 videos I've been doing on my YouTube channel, because every single day I've been like, I gotta save myself. I gotta save myself. I gotta save myself. I gotta save myself. I gotta build. I gotta fix. I gotta like figure this out. And to be held yesterday and to be grounded in the reality, I have saved myself. I don't have to save myself. I have saved ED, my first ED. Yay! My first ED. I have, in fact, saved myself. I am in a safe location. I feel safe in this location. There are masculines at close enough distance to me to save me when I go into a ditch, which was very grateful. I am observing masculines, and I'm sure it's not just masculines, but to me it feels very masculine energy, of dudes on snowmobiles driving by on the lake, and every single time one goes by, I'm like, that's masculine energy. Like, it feels safe, that feels safe. I am being held in container of Craig, masculine energy. And I'm like, oh, so this is what it is to be held by masculine energy. And now I have it modeled. I can hold myself in the same energy, in this something I can match, because I have examples. I'm even seeing in the world right now, with all the release of these files, is more healthy, divine masculine energy calling it out, standing up, saying this is not on. I found this one reporter. He's a young guy, Aaron something, and I absolutely love his videos. He's just an independent news dude, and I'm like, no agendas. He's just sharing truth and calling it out and fighting a good fight. And I'm seeing other men standing up in honor and integrity and calling it out, and I'm like, yeah. Oh, hells yeah. This is exciting. This is very exciting. And so I today am very am integrating. Like I am integrating. And one thing that I like also that he reframed for me, because I said, it feels like recently I've been going through another dark night of the soul. And he's like, this detox process that you are in is not another dark night of the soul. It is integration. It's the integration phase, and it can be challenging, but it is not the disintegration of your life. It's the reintegration of your new life, because you already are in new. You're driving new. You're doing new. You're interacting with new, and more and more. I was like, oh my god, yeah. So yesterday, like most of the day, I was in this position, which is you place one hand in your armpit and the other one you use to stroke, which is a somatic exercise. And when you use your left hand, that's your masculine energy. So I was like, just holding myself, going like over and over and over again to really ground and the reality that I did it. Like, I actually did it. Like, I did save myself. Do I have no problems in the world? No, of course not. I still need to figure out how I'm going to start making money, like, and build the U movement, if that's what God wants me to do. At the same time that I'm trying to save myself, I was trying to save the world. And well, you can't do two things at the same time. But when it comes to the mission that was save yourself, mission like one, I technically am allowed, as of today, I can give myself a check mark. I did, in fact, save myself. I did, in fact, heal my body. 95%. I still have some low back issues. I still have this mouth situation. But it's going to heal in its own time. I've given up searching outside of myself, and I healed my physical surroundings. I healed and escaped from the worst narcissistic fuckhead that you could possibly imagine. Like, kudos to anyone that has had the initiation, which is escape from narcissism. Because, like, that is, like everything else that I say, unless people have gone through it, they really have no clue. People really have no clue what it is to escape from abuse. They have no idea what it is to escape from not only abuse, but systems. Okay? The systems, the matrix, the thinking, the everything else, because and all the ways we abuse ourselves. Right? The entire system is abusive. Really. Society, the norm, and look at it now. Like, look what's being exposed, right? So if at the top we have these elites that are sick fucks, right? Then you have to understand that society as a whole is sick and fucked up. And thank God for Prophets of Rage and their song Unfuck the World, because, this is my next mission. Because, yeah, I saved myself. It took me 6 years. Let's see, 20, because it was December. This was 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, and we're at 26. So it took 7 years. It took 7 years in total to save myself, but I did, in fact, do that. And now I think, because I know I'm part of a collective, now I think a lot of people are like, yeah, and now I'm going to unfuck the world. Because I can see how I participated in this world, and I detoxified myself, which means I can't go back into a toxic world, but I can see the world. I can use my masculine energy to see the world, to hear the world, to acknowledge the world, to acknowledge the suffering, to hear and use my feminine to be compassionate and loving and kind, and think, won't somebody think of the children? Like I hear that in my head oftentimes. I'm wearing my Every Child Matters shirt because that includes our inner child. Like every child deserves safety. Every single child deserves safety. The children that are walking around on this planet today deserve safety at the very least as a human fundamental right. And the very fact that that's been deprived of them and us, our inner child, like I didn't have it until age 53. And I'm damn well going to do everything in my human power that resides in me to ensure that the toxicity doesn't continue on, and I'm going to add on to this, the pain and the suffering that is involved as we do the healing work, because oftentimes we have to walk away from our children. And now my son was 9 when I got together with my ex, and those first 9 years were very stable. Thank God for that. Thank God for that. My parenting in my first 9 years was do everything different than that was done to me. That's how I parented. And as I became more embroiled in an abusive marriage, I, for a very long time, thought that I was protecting him. I thought that by fighting but that kept my back to him. So I know that he suffered because of that. And then when I began my, further into the relationship, when my health began to deteriorate, I wasn't available to him as much as I should have been. And he felt abandoned, and he has every right to feel that way because it's reality. It's his reality. I acknowledge and I hear his reality. And although he's a grown man now, I needed to heal myself. Otherwise, I would be in no position to fix and repair any of the damage that I had previously done in ignorance. And that has burned in my soul in a very painful way, and that's one of the motivating factors that has been like, you got to keep going, unfuck this, unfuck that, unfuck this. Because it's like, and I've been in a rush because I wanted to get back to my son. I wanted to be able to reconnect with him. And it's not like we're no contact or anything like that, but there is definitely an energetic, detachment. And that had to be to a certain extent because that's healthy. We're raising adults, ultimately. You want to have somebody, and he is amazing. Like, he is independent, he is resourceful, he is intelligent, he has a great sense of humor, he is a kind human, he is integrity, he has honorability, he is respectful, he himself has, in a lot of ways, been more of a parent to me than I have to him. From the day one he came out, and he was like this little mini Buddha. He was just so calm and grounded. He's Taurus, energy. So he is just like really grounded and stabilizing force for me. That's fire. And I am so grateful, and I owe him so much, which is why I have been motivated to keep working and keep working and keep working and keep working and keep working, because I wanted to get to a place of health for him. I wanted to get to a place of wealth for him. And I haven't got that there yet. You know, I haven't built what I want to build. I'm only starting. I'm really only starting that next chapter of my life. But the point of this is, if we ourselves don't have health, if you do not have your health, you are no good to yourself. You are no good to your children. You are no good to friends and partners. You are no good to your bank account. You are no good to your, like, anything outside of you. It really, truly is in the process of saving yourself to, you know, put that oxygen mask on yourself first. And it's killed me inside that I wasn't able to figure this all out 15 years ago. And listen, everything happens in divine time, and I'll forgive myself for that too. But like, it is and will always be a regret, even though he's got his own soul contract. Listen, like my mind can, you know, go into like understanding and compassion pretty easily. So I'm not beating myself up. That's not what's happening here. But we do have to like take accountability and look at how our actions have positively and negatively had consequences. And the consequence of my soul's journey has been that I wasn't able to be there as much as I wanted to in a healthy way. So even when I was there, I wasn't as healthy as I wish that I could have been. That has had the consequence that he is very independent, which is a good consequence. But I hope that all of this healing work has been an example for him. Now, I know he doesn't watch my channel, but I hope it has been an example for him, as well as others, that when the cycle breaker, says enough, it ripples out and has a positive influence into all the generations that we have created. So our children, and then our children's children. So when it comes time for me to be a grandparent, should that happen or not happen, when that time comes, I am able to do it from a place of the wise woman and understanding, and be able to support in a way that is healthy and promotes the support that the builders of the new earth need. I look at my generation as the destroyers of the toxic, and I look at my son's generation and the generations that will follow as the builders. They're the ones that are going to come up with incredible innovations. They're the ones that are going to like rebuild after the collapse. And we're just starting to see the collapse, right? Royal families are beginning to collapse. Thank God for that. And political structures look like they're kind of starting to collapse. And this hierarchy is beginning to crumble, and within that the patriarchal structure is collapsing. It's beautiful. It's fucking beautiful. I like, past the popcorn, I love every single thing that I'm seeing. I do hope, like as I've said in my other video, I do hope that the next trend is mass confessions, mass whistleblowing. You know, I'm going to try to save my soul. This really is the only way to save your soul, you know, is for people to, like, you know, going and confessing to some dude in a little room with a robe. It's not going to do anything to save your soul. For the crimes against humanity, confess to humanity, right? So I hope that, you know, there's a mass amount of us that have awoken, and now we're looking out and we're seeing divine feminines rising up and calling out abuses. And we're seeing masculines hear them and honor them and acknowledge them and validate them and hold space for them and, like, talk about, like, a whole new reality. We're all integrating a whole new reality. We're all in a mass detox right now. Like a mass detox as this stuff surfaces, and surfaces each individual, and it surfaces collectively, because as within, so without, it has to. So the more that each individual reintegrates into this new, like, I like it because it feels kind of like the fire horse is melting. It's melting the functional freeze that we've all been in. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. It's melting that so that we can all, as a humanity, soften and allow our feminines to be heard and allow our feminines to be held. And I don't know what that's like. I don't know what that's like because I've never experienced it fully. But I have hope. You know, the spring will come. The thaw will come. The ice will melt. And I'm going to savor each moment of that as it does, because it is allowing that feminine, that mother energy from the earth to, like, to breathe. I could just keep visualizing in my mind's eye going out on my paddleboard and finding, you know, some nice little lily pads, watching the dragonflies and seeing life anew through a new set of eyes that have merged with my own divine masculine energy and can truly see and value and appreciate what beauty really is. And listen, like, I love the sound, like in the spring, the sound of the birds. Listen and hear And sometimes what we hear is going to be unpleasant this year. A lot of things that we're going to hear are going to be unpleasant. But I have a willingness to listen anyways. I have a willingness to honor the experiences that I've gone through, as well as the experiences that others have. I'm no longer encasing anything in ice. And that's beautiful. But until the freeze begins, I'm going to sit and really allow myself to soften and integrate the reality that I did it. I saved myself. I am sending everybody out there that is going through this incredible change all of my love. I am praying for peace, for justice, for swift and smooth transitions. I'm praying for an appreciation of beauty when we can find it. Because this shadow stuff has been ugly for a long time. So appreciating a little bit of beauty is a good thing. If you need help on your awakening path, please feel free to reach out and book a one-on-one with me. I am changing my structure because I want to spend as much time in my feminine energy as I can. So I'm working half as much. I've cut my days, I've cut my schedule. So that may limit things, it may not, we'll see. Everything happens in divine flow as it is, but I'm basically, instead of doing a 24-hour cycle, I'm doing one day of feminine energy and one day of masculine energy. So one day I'm going to do art and meditation and yoga. So I won't be seeing any clients, and I'm going to continue my silence practice of just enjoying. And then the next day I'm going to busy myself doing videos and doing work and doing groups, which brings me to, like, if you want to join the Spiritual Warrior support groups, those are on Wednesdays and Fridays. Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and Fridays at 12 noon. And I look forward to you. So come and join the conversation. With that all said, peace. Peace in.